welcome to the Digital Dialogue for Sam Sangster, the king of the Western Parkland City, the boss of the Aerotropolis. And Sam, good morning. You've, after having previously in this part of the world led the hospital revolution that's putting health facilities all over Western Sydney, you took an even bigger gig. How's life in the Aerotropolis in these COVID times?
Oh, look, Chris, I think probably like most of us, working remotely has been an interesting experience for us all, remaining highly productive. Look, I think for us in the Aerotropolis and a focus particularly around the investment attraction, it's actually meant that a number of our international and domestic partners that are either existing partners or people that we're seeking to attract have actually been more accessible to us. And so it's actually interesting. This mode of work has actually meant that everybody is actually more accessible in some ways to actually be able to jump on a call for 20 minutes and actually have a chat about things that are going on, irrespective of where they are in the world. And so I think we're all thinking through what this new way of working looks like and how that will actually change some of our thinking about the way that we build the Western City, and particularly how we might build the Aerotropolis.
We've heard news recently that more federal and state funding going into the airport link, the airport rail, the train line that's on its fourth day. I think now it's the Metro Western Sydney Airport line within. That's got to be good news. It's a sort of shot in the arm and a reminder to everybody that stuff's getting real in the Western City, that the train line's coming, identified stations. Not everybody's happy where they weren't and were, but in our world there is, and also this week, the minister's come out, Transport Minister, with a view to codify and enshrine future rail corridors for extension of that network. It's going to be a nice shot in the arm for the project to see that hard infrastructure on its way, as well as the airport itself being built.
Yeah, look, any day that you have federal and state governments announcing, the best part of $11 billion coming into your neck of the woods, just be very clear, the train line won't stop at the airport, even though that's in its name. It will run onto the Aerotropolis, and that's a critical piece.
It'll stop there, it just won't full stop there. Yes,
that's it. There will be stations at the airport, but there'll also be a station in the Aerotropolis core CBD. The really important thing.
There's always time to change the name again, Sam. We can call it the Western City Aerotropolis.
Look, I'll leave that to much smarter people than me, Chris. I'm very focused now about given that announcement. We need to pause and reflect, and you and many people have been advocating for connecting the West to the West, and there's a number of incredible things that have happened off the back of this rail line. This is the first rail line that connects Western Sydney to Western Sydney. This is not a radial rail line that runs back into the old established harbour city. This is connecting the West with the West, and we know that this is just the start. And as you've highlighted, Chris, the Transport Minister and Planning Minister released the corridors to the south this week as well. So that is, this is, I guess, part of that whole confidence building exercise that says, we plan these things. These lines have been sketched out in Transport 2040, the long-term transport plan for the city. This rail line, is the first rail line that has been committed in Sydney that wasn't drawn by Bradfield. And so we need to actually stop and pause about just how important from a city building perspective this actually is. It's obviously an awful lot of money. We're excited that there'll be 14,000 construction jobs that come along with the development of that, and we know that creating jobs at the moment is a really important piece, particularly for our construction sector. But beyond that, this is a city shaping moment, and I don't think any of us should underestimate the importance that when we look back at that moment in a number of years' time and go, wow, that really did change things. And to be blunt, we've used that. I've used that. I wrote to all of our foundation partners that day and said, governments have just put another, nearly $11 billion on the table. That should give you great confidence in making your investment decisions to come to the Aerotropolis. And universally, we've had only positive back in terms of that actually makes it very easy. And we've said this pre-COVID and even during COVID, it's even more important. We're in a global race for capital, and in a post-COVID world, people will be making risk assessments based on geographies, and the way New South Wales has handled the COVID environment and the way that we're going about our work, about being so focused on attracting business and so focused on what the job creation and the industries of the future actually look like, that that sort of confidence building moment, we just can't underestimate just how important a moment that is in terms of really putting that full stop in the sentence that says this is no longer something that's just being talked about, it's actually being delivered. And I'm sure you've been on this journey a very long time too, Chris, and I think there are days you have in your career, and you've had them and I've had them, actually having the PM and the Premier stand there announcing that rail line at the airport site. It's one of those moments you kind of look back and you think that's a moment in time.
You betcha. You're right. Been on this process for a fair while. Hey, give people an understanding. There's still this concept that Aerotropolis, apart from being a crazy name, it's a generic idea, this future city near an airport. When do we think we can put a bit of meat to the bone? I mean, you've got a lineup of very impressive global partners who've signed an MOU and intention to develop. They're largely tenants, not owners. I think that's that way. When will we start to see that take physical form of what that means? What Hitachi will be doing? What NEC have planned for that? What Vitex? Where does it go to the next stage to bring people along as to get a physicality around the precinct?
Yeah, look, Chris,
I mean, just the core originally, and then obviously the broader spread.
Yeah, absolutely. So, look, I think across the whole 11,000 hectares, we've got to remember 11,000 hectares is a heck of a lot of space. I mean, Barangaroo is 20 hectares, right? So, we've got a lot of land here. We are absolutely focused now with the rail announcement that we need to make sure that with that scale of government investment, we capitalise on activating around those stations. Yep. So, the Aerotropolis core is absolutely our focus. We already have a view. We haven't made that public yet about what we think some of the initial development will look like around the Aerotropolis core station and in that new CBD. And we've spent the COVID period working really closely with our foundation partners and with some others that we'll be able to talk about more publicly shortly. And we've actually progressed very significantly in terms of having a really clear understanding about what they would like to do, what they want to do, and we have a level of commitment from people that I think will surprise people when we actually pop out later this year.
Will it look more like a Barangaroo, more like a Palo Alto spaceship buildings? I mean, how do we envisage now
watch this space? This is certainly not tall towers. I think we need to be really clear that this is
campus style.
This is campus style and highly walkable, highly connected to the landscape, and being really respectful and thoughtful about how we ensure that this is a city centre within the parkland city, and so it does need to have some reflection around the parklands and open space. Okay. But this is also getting the first buildings out of the ground, and I think when you begin to think through how that looks like, there's an awful lot of conceptualisation that's required to go from a very greenfields area. And hopefully all of your members and those listening and watching this would actually have a sense of just how greenfields this part of Sydney actually is. It's very unusual in a city of the scale of Sydney to have such a large landmass that really is, largely agricultural in use right now, broadacre green space. There's obviously some existing great businesses that exist across the parkland city. There's also some small businesses, medium-sized enterprises across that area. So, I don't want those people to misunderstand what we're saying. But this is a rare and unusual moment
So we're not thinking Canary Wharf. We took a group of senior Westies to London last year. Not as ambitious as the study tours you went on, but East London seemed like an appropriate place for us. And in a way, Canary Wharf is an almost. It's probably almost as much Parramatta as it is Aerotropolis. But one thing we did learn from the Canary Wharf developers was this concept that foreign capital didn't come with the prejudice that local capital came. That they couldn't attract the big old crusty banks of London, City of London, to come all the way out. 5 miles, 7 miles to Barangaroo, to Canary Wharf, but they found that foreign banks, foreign players, even youth startups in coffee shops and stationery suppliers, they couldn't overcome the prejudice of we wouldn't dare go to East London. Similarly, in a way, you seem to have had great success in foreign foundation partners, Japanese particularly, Americans and others who've come in. And apart from Vitex, a couple, there's it's probably been much more weighted towards a foreign investor. Is that a similar thing? Is there still an issue of overcoming sort of a geographic prejudice of Australian investors that's easier with those from other parts of the world?
Look, I think one of the things that's actually happened, Chris, I think pre-COVID, that is probably a fair statement. And if you look at the announcements and the companies that you've seen us highlighted, having said that, we've had some incredible Australian companies like BAE Systems Australia, as you said, Vitex. There's been a whole raft of really serious Australian-based companies.
And the universities, the four universities.
The universities that are playing such a strong role in that. But I think what's been very interesting, and, it was interesting that through COVID, it's really caused people to stop and reflect on what their supply chains look like, and particularly around supply chain and self-sufficiency. And previously, we've actually been actively approached by a number of people, and we've sought out some others that we're talking to now that are absolutely focused on revisiting their supply chain and where their location is in this region. And what's happened through the COVID process is obviously access to foreign capability, whether that's manufacturing, whether it's maintenance, repair, overhaul, whether it's a whole range of sort of capabilities. That the COVID period has caused them to really pause and reflect about, well, what actually can we do domestically? What makes sense to have domestically? Yeah. And look at it through a lens that previously probably, let's be fair, would have been done purely on a labour arbitrage basis. If it was cheaper to do offshore, it was offshored. Yep. We have a lot of companies that are looking to bring things back now. And we really are in the right place at the right time, I think. Someone said to me the other day, oh, geez, you're really lucky. And I kind of laughed and said, 18 months of slog work actually makes you lucky.
Ways to go. Blokes who work hard make their own luck. You're identifying those who want to look up and look out. I know you've spoken about that as your ambition to inspire local businesses to use the Aerotropolis to think of something bigger and better.
Categorically. And if you reflect on the comments that the Prime Minister made in launching the revised defence strategy, there was a very clear set of statements there around looking at streamlining capability development, bolstering supply chain security in defence. And, we've already been talking to a number of defence contractors, and we're actually well advanced in a number of the defence realm right now. We can potentially offer some things in a highly cyber secure from the get up. We can actually design a city centre in a way that is very hard to retrofit. And so, we're talking to some of our existing partners and some of our potential future partners about how you might actually design an area that actually is unlike any other precinct in the country, that actually enables that. And so when we see,
you're the only bloke in the world who's out looking for high defence industry and agribusiness at the same time. It's the unique nature of the garden, Western Parkland City, that you're working both sides of that coin.
Well, but if you actually think about it, Chris, they're actually intertwined in a way. But if you think about the defence material perspective, but also the ability, what's that old adage? I think it was First and Second World War. An army marches on its stomach. Well, a country marches on its stomach too. And it's really interesting if you look at the most recent economic data that CBA put out just earlier in the week around food. While people are still eating out, there's a new normal that's been established. If you eliminate the blip from the crisis buying earlier in the year, food acquisition has actually gone up. If you talk to our friends at Sydney Market, they'll tell you they're as busy as ever, trying to supply fresh fruit and vegetables. So
people are rediscovering cooking. I mean, you go to Bunnings and try to buy some seedlings. But people don't realise it takes 4 months to grow the broccoli, but there's a lot of front some gardeners.
So look, I think the really critical piece, and we've actually now been talking to some what we're calling the supply chain. So we're not just talking to the primes, and we're actually looking at 150 odd companies across Western Sydney already that we know have got capability either as existing subcontractors in that sort of defence realm and aerospace and space, or ones that actually have capability that probably don't even realise they actually have capability that could be applied in those sectors. And so, I see what's happening right now, and pre-COVID and pre the release of the Commonwealth's commitment around defence, it was 200 billion. It's now 275 billion. So there's a fair old chance that if we can position ourselves in the next little while, we position ourselves incredibly well to actually be able to deliver a physical space and capability for some of those very clear statements coming out of the Commonwealth around they want that local domestic supply chain capability located in Australia. And we're not going to be welding the ship hulls like is happening in Osborne in Port Adelaide, my dearest hometown. But you talk about Westies, Chris. That's about as Westy as it comes in Adelaide. But it's the advanced tech, and when you hear about some of the things that are being discussed in that realm. This is where the agriculture piece becomes really interesting. Is actually a number of the sensing technologies and some of the other technology that's actually being sought comes straight out of either our agribusiness and some of the work that Hitachi's been doing with Meat and Livestock Australia already. You know, some of that is as world leading in the space arena. You just simply can't believe some of the tech that now goes into agri. So the ability for us to pick up on some of those capabilities and actually really drive them into an R&D hub that can then translate that into manufacturing is, I think, the piece that we're so excited about.
Let me jump out of the Aerotropolis sector. I'm conscious of your time. I want to go to the rest of the Western City, the north and south stretch from Campbelltown to the Hawkesbury, and all stops in between. Part of the city deal was that there's Livability Fund. I've noticed this week that Campbelltown started digging on the Billabong, the one big sort of waterway that Lindy Dietz has and Mayor George have to try and give big more recreational water to the people of Macarthur, which is great. Have you seen a positive progress? That's the first one of those I've spotted. Are the other little livability funds, the other 8 councils who got it's about 15 million each from the Commonwealth? Will we see a collection of obvious projects, or are some of them just going into existing programs to supplement funding?
No, look, they're all each of the 8 councils has fabulous projects underway in their area. In fact, if you travelled further down the south, Ben was delighted to have the minister on Wednesday last week also open the new skate park.
Nice.
So
you and I should get down there and christen it.
Well, my 11-year-old is nagging to do so. She's a very keen skateboarder, so we underestimate, I think, how important some of those assets are, and I think in the current environment, having that active recreation spaces across our city is critically important. And so, while some people say that's a small project, it's not small for the people that live locally there. And that's why this Livability Fund, I think, has been so important. It was great to be in Campbelltown again on Wednesday last week. Again, looking at the Billabong, it's big. If people haven't driven down Appin Road lately and gone and have a bit of a look there, it sits directly opposite the Arts Centre, and so you're going to have.
I passed it yesterday. It's good. It's really going to make a mark.
Yeah, it makes a mark, and it's a pretty big footprint. And while you're there, you can admire the tower cranes on Campbelltown Hospital redevelopment that's going on as well. Just a bit of a free place.
Are you noticing a cultural change? The City Deal, the first real one in the country, is the Western City one. Now, we have an ambition to try and bring it to the other city, Western City, the Central City as well. Are you noticing that long-term cultural embedded change that comes as a result of that combined governance model?
Chris, look, I think you know better than anybody. People in the West love the West, and I think what they're actually seeing is investment coming along to match their passion for the West. And so, when you see the level of investment that's now coming to actually match the aspiration and match the capability of the people of the West, I think that's the piece that it's no longer a conversation. And you go back to the rail announcement. These are not projects that probably have ever been seen by the West at that scale and in such intensity. And the work that we're doing in such a focused area around trying to bring the world to Western Sydney and the Aerotropolis core and around agri, those livability projects. This is all about ensuring that we actually deliver this Western Parkland City to be the best part of Sydney, frankly.
Very essential. But we've been through this incredible period. We're still going through this incredible period of transformation. We've all said in our businesses, our ability to go digital, to work remotely, to focus on different things, but it's a personal transformation. How are you different as a dad, as a boss, as a collaborator coming through this? How is life going to be different the way you at the office and at home in future?
Yeah, look, I think it's certainly something we've been talking to our whole team about how they've gone through this process, and I think if our little organisation of 40 odd people is emblematic of what's happening, people have reconnected with their neighbourhoods, Chris. And I think when you talk about things like that skate park again, that becomes the return to the neighbourhood, the importance of the neighbourhood, and actually beginning to know who's in your neighbourhood and what services you can access locally, has meant that as people transition back into the workplace, and we're very progressively looking at just very small numbers going back into the office as needed. There's a real question around, do we need to be, for those that don't live locally, do they need to commute? Do they need to come to the office 5 days a week? How is it we're actually achieving achieving work. And what's really interesting is, I look at my little organisation, and we've been blessed with an incredible team, Chris. That's just, they found a way to be even more productive than we probably were before. And I think part of this now is, as a leader, to be really clear about, okay, let's now shift that dial from that inbuilt probable bias that we had around, well, if you're working from home, you're not really working. Actually, people have demonstrated clearly that they've been able to deliver incredible results. And I think we need to remain very outcomes focused and be very clear that we provide spaces for that to happen.
That's an interesting angle that you're building a centre for Australia to better globally engage.
Yeah.
At the same time as we're focusing back on our local neighbourhood, there's a wonderful synchronicity there.
And so therefore for us, it's a really interesting question around, okay, well, the spaces and places that we're looking then to actually have put together, does that change the nature of those? And I think what it does is it actually reinforces that there are a whole range of activities that actually you need to be able to bring people together. And some of the work that we're doing, the master planning work we're doing, the ability to have a sheet of paper, a big bit of tracing paper over a big map and be scribbling all over it, it's pretty hard to do over a Zoom call. But there are a number of other activities, commercial negotiations, some of the work we've been doing in that front. It's perfectly easy to jump on a call like this and do that. Yeah. And I think it's about, let's be very clear about what activity you're actually undertaking and ensure we have the right work style for that. And I think, I really genuinely believe that actually this is a massive opportunity for the West. And, I've been talking to a number of the big organisations that are based in the established Sydney CBD, and actually saying to them, so tell me about where your staff live. And I was talking to one of the big accounting firms managing partners the other day, and there's this really, and you would know this, there's a really interesting inverse relationship between seniority and how close that they live to the Sydney CBD. And they've now committed to open an office in Parramatta. Why? Because 60+% of their grads actually live closer to Parramatta than they do to the Sydney CBD, and they don't live east of Parramatta. They live west of Parramatta.
Let me unveil them. The great Ernst & Young, who, having done some of that work with them, if they were going to build a new office to suit the partnership, it would have been in Raglan Street, Mossman. But they're doing it to interestingly for their staff and their customers who don't live there, and it's a great model and a great experiment.
So I think we need to be very thoughtful about, and I actually think this is a massive opportunity, and we've been talking to our council colleagues as well. I think this is a massive opportunity for Campbelltown and for Liverpool and for Penrith. If you think about Penrith, if you've got a whole range of your staff that live in the mountains and who previously come down the mountains on the train into the city, and we know you've seen the train line, the T1 line's pretty busy. Well, how about they actually get off at Penrith and actually do a Monday, Tuesday, and Friday out of the Penrith satellite office? And then maybe they only have to go into the Sydney CBD on...
Sam Sangster scaring the hell out of institutional property owners in the Sydney CBD. Long may it continue.
Well, I think this is the opportunity, and I think this is where we need to really put our best foot forward in the West and say, you know what, we've got a great population that lives locally. How about we make sure we've got the workplaces that enable them to actually be productive and to do the things where they do need to be able to come in and, we still need us oldies that I can't read everything on a screen. There are times I've gone to the office to print a couple of documents. Just you get a lengthy document. Sometimes you need to be able to read. It's pretty hard to do it on a screen. So there's and to catch up with some people. Doing things face to face sometimes is just a lot easier. Some of the conversation you need to have. So I think we need to understand the work styles will be different going forward, and we need to create workspaces that are contemporary and of the future rather than backward looking. But particularly in the advanced manufacturing and the research arena that we're very much focused on, that's all about collaboration. And so the collaboration spaces and safe, clean spaces is going to be an important element of that going
Sam,
forward.
we promised Western Sydney that if they backed us in to support the airport, we'd deliver smart jobs for their kids. You've got a government metric for $200,000 jobs in the Western City. And I know you take that very seriously, and you're making a nice down payment on that. There's a little bit of John Bradfield in all of us. Some of us, like you, get a chance to play up the Bradfield fantasies a little more in city shaping, city building. So, mate, good luck and Godspeed. The Western City is in good hands.
Thanks very much, Chris.
Cheers, mate.